Hours after hitting a 9-month low, gold futures rose more than 1% to above $1,700 an ounce on Tuesday, as both the U.S. dollar and Treasury yields retreated. This as concerns remain over inflation and what the Federal Reserve will do as the latest $1.9 trillion stimulus package nears President Biden's approval. So joining me now to discuss is Peter Schiff, Chief Economist and Global Strategist at Euro-Pacific Capital. Now, Peter, gold has been in a downward trend. So is this rebound we saw earlier likely to stick?
Well, I have no idea. It wasn't that, impressive a move, considering how much gold has dropped preceding this move on a Tuesday. A lot of things that were beaten up bounced back today. Look at the move we saw in the tech stocks that had been really getting hammered as rates were rising. So I don't know if we've seen the lows in gold, but I know for sure we haven't seen the highs. So when this correction is over, the price of gold is going much, much higher.
Yeah, and there is a lot of talk that it still has a long way to go and that this is just the beginning. Now, we've also heard a lot of talk about inflation, and you yourself have said that the Federal Reserve is between a rock and a hard place right now because it couldn't fight inflation even if it wanted to. So how long do you see Jerome Powell continuing to promise to keep interest rates low?
Well, rates are going to have to stay low indefinitely because the entire economy is a bubble. I mean, it's not a legitimate recovery that we're enjoying. It's simply the spending of borrowed money and more literally printed money. We're running massive deficits. The federal government is spending over $8 trillion a year, but collecting less than $3.5 trillion in taxes. The difference is pretty much being supplied by the Fed, and Americans are spending all this money. That's why our trade deficits are skyrocketing right now. So the whole thing that's keeping this house of cards from imploding is 0% interest rates and QE. So the Fed is not going to pull the rug out from under this bubble, but it has to pretend that if it ever sees an inflation problem, that it's got the tools to fight it, even though it's bluffing, because even if it had the tools, it would never use them because the tools would destroy the house of cards that they've erected.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it is interesting that you refer to it as a house of cards as we have Congress passing another $1.9 trillion in stimulus. Now, the Federal Reserve seems to be doing everything it can to keep the markets calm right now. But if inflation fears continue to increase, do you see gold and precious metal prices catching up to those expectations?
Well, absolutely. See, right now, I think the markets sense that inflation is going to be moving higher and maybe even higher than what the Fed is acknowledging. But I think the markets still believe the Fed, that the Fed will be able to contain the inflation problem before it really runs out of control. So it's the expectation that the Fed's going to fight inflation by raising rates. That's what's pressuring gold. But the markets are wrong. I mean, the Fed is not even going to attempt to fight inflation. It's going to surrender. Inflation is going to win without a fight. And when the markets realize that the Fed is all bark and no bite, and that inflation is going to be an even bigger problem that is going to be uncontrollable, then the bottom is going to fall out of the dollar and gold's going through the roof.
Yeah, well, that definitely creates a lot of hope for those investors in gold. Now, I can't have you on without talking a little bit about cryptocurrencies. I know you've been a big critic, but it appears that other skeptics have been changing their tune in recent weeks. Why do you think that is? And of course, do you see it lasting?
Well, certainly there are some of the skeptics who are now capitulating, which is something that you might expect at the end of a mania. The early doubters, naysayers, can't help it, and they join the party usually pretty late. Whether or not this party is going to rage for a while longer is hard to say. I also question some of the legitimacy of some of these Bitcoin converts, because I think some of the people who are now bullish also have vested interest. They've kind of got involved in some crypto-related enterprise, and so it's in their financial interest to now be promoting Bitcoin. So whether or not their newfound love for Bitcoin is genuine or not, it's hard to say when there's a lot of money at stake and people are trying to get their piece of the pie before it's gone.
Yeah, well, great insight to consider here. Peter Schiff, thank you so much for your time.
Sure thing.